Corbyn.
Mr. Speaker, today would have been the 90th birthday of Anne Frank had she survived but died in the Nazi Bergen-Belsen concentration camp in 1945. In her diary, she wrote many things, but one of them that I think really does apply to all of us at all times is, human greatness does not lie in wealth or power, but in character and goodness. And I think we should remember her life and all that she's inspired in so many others ever since the Second World War. Later this week, I'll be joining those families and survivors commemorating the second anniversary of the Grenfell fire, in which dozens of people died. As Sunday's fire in the flats in Barking reminds us, there is still much more to do to ensure that people are safe in their homes in all parts of this country. As is traditional, Mr. Speaker, I'm sure the whole House will join me in welcoming the new member for Peterborough, my honourable friend who's sitting behind me today. The country, Mr. Speaker, is in crisis over Brexit. Manufacturing is in crisis. The Prime Minister's government has brought us to this point. And now the Conservative Party is once again in the process of foisting a new Prime Minister on the country without the country having a say through a general election. This Prime Minister created the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy in July 2016. Has the Prime Minister actually delivered an industrial strategy since then? Can I first of all echo the comments of the right honourable gentleman in recognising what would have been the 90th birthday of Anne Frank. Nobody can have read the testimony of Anne Frank in her diary without being deeply moved and deeply shocked by what she had to live through. And that is, it seems to me, another reason why everybody across this House and across our society should do everything we can in the fight against anti-Semitism. Can I also take, this is my first opportunity to welcome the new honourable member for Peterborough to her seat in this chamber. The right honourable gentleman mentioned the business department and industrial strategy. Well, it's quite obvious he'd written his question before he heard the answer to the question from my honourable friend, the member for Lichfield, which of course referred not only to our national industrial strategy, but also to our regional industrial strategies, which are making a real difference in creating the record levels of employment that we see in this country. Well, Mr. Speaker, the answer she gave has a sort of unreality about it all, really. Since... Let me explain. I'm trying to help you. If the members opposite could contain their excitement for a moment, I just thought I'd remind them that since 2016, when the Bays Department was set up, the labour force survey shows that there are 147,000 fewer people working in manufacturing in Britain. Apprenticeship starts are down by 25%, and manufacturing output fell by 3.9% in March and April this year, the largest fall for 2 decades. In the last year, Jaguar Land Rover, Honda, Vauxhall, Ford and Nissan have all announced UK job losses. Does the Prime Minister think her Department for Industrial Strategy has been good for that industry?
Say to the right honourable gentleman that I think this reveals an awful lot about him and the Labour Party's approach to these issues. The point of the industrial strategy is to make sure that we have the economy with the jobs of the future. And that is why it is good to see that in that industrial strategy we have key challenges such as artificial intelligence and data, which will underpin the work we're doing in clean growth, in mobility, in the health service, as well as so much more. On Monday, I was pleased to attend London Tech Week, to speak at London Tech Week, to do a roundtable with tech businesses in this country, to welcome the tech unicorns developed in London, the 5 tech unicorns developed in Manchester, and to welcome the over £1 billion of investment in the tech sector in this country that was announced at that time. We are looking to the jobs of the future. That's where the high-skilled, high-paid jobs are, and that's what this government is delivering.
Mr. Speaker, last week Ford announced it would end production at its Bridgend plant. UK car production has been virtually cut in half in the last 11 consecutive months. Ford has also said that a no-deal Brexit would put a further 6,000 UK jobs at risk, with thousands more at risk in the supply chain. Nissan, Toyota, BMW and JLR have all said similar. Will the Prime Minister take this opportunity to reiterate her government's assessment that a no-deal Brexit would be disastrous for Britain? I think some of her colleagues behind her and alongside her need reminding of that.
Can I say, first of all, to the right honourable gentleman, obviously the issue of the announcement by Ford is very worrying, and it's an uncertain time for workers and their families in Bridgend. Ford have committed to supporting employees throughout the consultation process and beyond, including with redeployment opportunities to other Ford sites in the UK. But my right honourable friend, the Business Secretary, and my right honourable friend, the Welsh Secretary, have spoken to Ford, and we're working closely with them, with the Welsh Government. I spoke to the First Minister of Wales, spoke to me as well on these issues, and working with local stakeholders and trade union representatives to ensure that those skilled and valued workers are supported throughout this process. The right honourable gentleman then goes on to talk about no deal and his concerns about a no deal situation. Can I just say it would come a little bit more sincerely from him if he hadn't gone through the lobbies regularly and consistently voting to increase the chances of no deal by voting against the deal.
The Prime Minister may not have noticed, but her deal was rejected 3 times by Parliament. And, Mr. Speaker, another industry failed by the UK government is that of UK steel. Why didn't the government agree a deal to support our steel industry?
Can I just say to the right honourable gentleman, I think the point he makes is exactly the point that I was making, which is the fact that, had the right honourable gentleman really believed that we should be leaving the European Union and doing it with a deal, then he would have voted for the deal. We could have left the European Union and actually we could be on to that brighter future already. We did work with British Steel. We worked with its owner, Greybull Capital, and lenders to explore all the potential options to secure a solution for British Steel. And as shown through the ETS agreement that the government put in place, we were willing to act. We continue to work with the official receiver and with the British Steel support group, that's management, trade unions, and with companies in the supply chain and local communities, to pursue every possibility, every possible step to secure the future of the valuable operations in sites at Scunthorpe, at Skinning Grove and on Teesside. And I myself will be meeting a group of members of Parliament from the region whose constituencies are affected later today.
Well, since the government did nothing to protect the steel industry in Redcar, I hope they're going to do a bit better on Scunthorpe, where 5,000 jobs are at risk. The Bay Select Committee raises questions about whether the government actually entered into the negotiations in good faith. Another sector, Mr. Speaker, that has been failed by the government is that of the renewables industry. Solar installations are down by 94%. Onshore wind coming to a grinding halt. And they failed to back the very important, very exciting and innovative Swansea Bay Tidal Lagoon. They're failing on cars, on steel and on renewables. I know the Tory leadership candidates have been falling over themselves to confess to their past indulgences. But can the Prime Minister name an industry that is legal, that her government industry ministers have actually backed?
Honourable gentleman, he talks about solar power. Let's actually look at the facts. 99% of solar power deployed in the UK has been deployed under a Conservative government. Last year, renewables generated a record amount of electricity. This is indeed a record that this government can be proud of. But while he's talking about renewables, I'm very surprised the right honourable gentleman hasn't taken the opportunity to stand up and thank this government for our announcement today that we are going to legislate for net zero on emissions by 2050.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Mr. Speaker, the legacy of her government is one of failure. They claimed they would tackle burning injustices. They failed. They told pensioners their benefits were safe. Now they're taking away the TV licences for the over 75s. They promised action. They promised action on Grenfell. 2 years on, there is still flammable cladding on thousands of homes across this country. They promised a northern powerhouse. They failed to deliver it. And every northern newspaper is campaigning for this government to power up the north. They promised net zero by 2050, yet they failed on renewables and are missing
Order! The right honourable gentleman won't be shouted down. It isn't going to happen. Don't waste your breath. It's not productive and it's terribly boring. Jeremy Corbyn!
Mr. Speaker, they promised net zero by 2050, yet they failed on renewables and are missing their climate change targets. They promised an industrial strategy. Output is falling. So which does the Prime Minister see as the biggest industrial failure of her government? The car industry, the steel industry or the renewables industry? Which is it?
Can I just say to the right honourable gentleman, he can pose for his YouTube clip as much as he likes. But let's actually look at what this government has delivered. What we have delivered is a racial disparity audit that deals with the inappropriate inequality of public services for people from different communities. Record investment in transport infrastructure in the north. A record employment rate. Lowest unemployment for 45 years. Wages growing faster than inflation. A record cash boost for the NHS. Better mental health support. More homes being built. Stamp duty cut. Higher standards in our schools. And leading the world on climate change. That's a record of Conservatives in government that we are proud of, and we will never let him destroy it.